At least 7 people were killed in 2 separate strikes on Lebanon's capital, Beirut, as Israel says it intends to occupy large parts of southern Lebanon.
The EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas says that if Hungary continues to block €90 billion loan for Ukraine, the EU will reconsider using Russian assets.
A Russian tanker has arrived in Cuba, marking the first oil delivery to the island in 3 months in what the US says was needed for humanitarian reasons.
At least 7 people were killed in 2 separate strikes on Lebanon's capital, Beirut, early on Wednesday, the Lebanese health ministry said. It added that at least 24 people had been injured as Israel claimed it had struck a senior Hezbollah commander and another member of the group. More Israeli strikes also hit southern Lebanon as fierce clashes with Hezbollah fighters continued. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said his country intends to occupy large parts of southern Lebanon in the strongest language yet from Israel since invading its northern neighbor.
בנוסף תאפשר באופן מוחלט חזרתם דרומית לליטני של למעלה מ-600,000 תושבי דרום לבנון שהתפנו צפונה עד שיובטח ביטחונם ושלומם של תושבי הצפון. כל הבתים בכפרים סמוכי הגבול בלבנון יהרסו בהתאם למודל רפיח ובית חנון בעזה כדי להסיר אחת ולתמיד את האיומים סמוכי הגבול מעל תושבי הצפון.
Lebanese Defense Minister Michel Menassa quickly condemned the comments, saying the plans reflect a clear intention to impose a new occupation of Lebanese territory and forcibly displace hundreds of thousands of citizens. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney denounced Israel's deployment of troops against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon as an illegal invasion that violates its integrity and sovereignty. Lebanese authorities say the war has so far killed more than 1,200 people and displaced more than 1 million.
The United States and Israel have struck at least 132 cultural and historical sites in Iran, according to an Iranian UNESCO official. Numerous palaces and a mosque have been damaged.
اینکه هزینه ها چقدر اصلا نمیشه گفت. اولا ببین چه اینها پرایسلسه به تعبیری. اینها غیر قابل جبرانن. چجوری میشه اینها رو تعبیر کرد؟
Fatousi accused the United States and Israel of intentionally targeting the sites, stressing they possess advanced technologies enabling them to know what they are hitting. UNESCO said it provided all parties to the conflict with the coordinates of the heritage sites ahead of time to avoid damage.
بی‌دفاع‌تر از میراث فرهنگی و میراث طبیعی که نیست. به نظرم در یک جمله هدف قرار دادن میراث فرهنگی هدف قرار دادن هویت انسانیه. اگر دغدغه انسان داریم لازمه که حرمت میراث فرهنگی رو نگه داریم.
Iranian officials requested the United Nations Cultural Agency earlier this month to add more sites to its enhanced protection list.
The European Union High Representative Kaja Kallas has said that if Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban continues to block the €90 billion loan intended for Ukraine, the European Union will have to reconsider using frozen Russian assets. Kajas made the comments during a visit to Kyiv with several EU foreign ministers to commemorate the 4th anniversary of the Bucha massacre.
The loan that we are working right now to deliver, that we agreed in the end of last year, but let me remind you that that was actually Plan B. Plan A was the use of frozen assets. So we should also keep in mind that if Plan B does not work, let's go back to Plan A. But we definitely need to deliver Ukraine the financing that they need to resist the Russian aggression.
At the commemoration event, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky took the opportunity to emphasize that Europe's own security is also at stake because of the war.
Russia must not be left in any position that it could see as better than before, not in territory, not in technologies, not in politics. This is essential for peace and Europe.
Zelensky also said he was confident that the US will also resume its support for Ukraine as soon as its attention is no longer tied in the Middle East conflict.
A Russian oil tanker carrying 730,000 barrels of crude has arrived in Cuba, marking the first oil delivery the Caribbean island has received in 3 months. The island nation has been a target of the Trump administration since Washington's stunning intervention in Venezuela early in January, which saw the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Trump accused Havana of providing personnel to secure Maduro's alleged narco-trafficking operations in exchange for oil and money, and moved to cut off all crude supplies and place sanctions against sales to Cuba. The White House says the shipment was allowed to address humanitarian issues.
This is not a policy change. There has not been a formal change in sanction policy. As the president said last night, we allowed this ship to reach Cuba in order to provide humanitarian needs to the Cuban people. These decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. And as the administration has said, Cuba's non-functional economy cannot be fixed unless they undergo dramatic political and leadership change. But there has been no formal change with respect to sanction policy.
Officials in Cuba say the embargo has led to a near-total collapse of the country's medical sector, impacted manufacturing industries, and energy services. The island has been grappling with long blackouts, severe shortages of food, and critical medicine. Humanitarian organizations say much more oil needs to be delivered to Cuba to alleviate the unfolding humanitarian crisis. Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara has made his first trip to London since the fall of longtime leader Bashar al-Assad, where he met with Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss the war in Iran. His visit comes after London announced the resumption of diplomatic relations with Syria last year. The leaders discussed the need for a viable plan to reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively closed since the beginning of the war, causing global oil prices to dramatically spike. They also spoke about ongoing hostilities in Syria and al-Shara's plans to address them. Since al-Shara has been in power, sectarian clashes have continued to cause repeated bloodshed in the country, and the so-called Islamic State terror group remains at large. Starmer welcomed the government's efforts at countering the violence and terrorism, noting that much progress has been observed. The British Premier also urged closer cooperation with Damascus on the return of illegal migrants, border security, and tackling smuggling networks. Between 2011 and 2021, over 30,000 Syrian nationals were granted asylum in the UK after the civil war sparked a refugee crisis.
Three months after Greek authorities intervened to curb the outbreak of sheeppox, killing thousands of animals, farmers are in despair. By early March, authorities had killed over 480,000 sheep and goats in an effort to contain the disease, with the hardest hit areas located in central and northern Greece.
Είμαστε σε εγκλισμό για 2 μήνες 3, το οποίο δεν ξέρουμε πότε άμα ξαναβγεί άλλο κρούσμα, ξανά πάλι σε εγκλισμό. Με αποτέλεσμα να αυξάνονται οι ζωοτροφές, να μην μπορούμε να βγούμε έξω για βοσκή και να αυξάνεται το κόστος παραγωγής.
Farmers say the sharp decline in livestock and the resulting drop in milk production now poses a serious threat to feta. The famous cheese is one of Greece's most valuable export products.
Επειδή θανατώθηκαν 500-600 πρόβατα, το γάλα θα είναι κατά πολύ μειωμένο. Με αποτέλεσμα θα επηρεαστεί και στη φέτα. Θα είναι πάρα πολύ μειωμένη η φέτα.
Cheese producers in the region report that milk production has decreased by about 40% this year. As the country's main feta-producing region, accounting for more than half of total exports, any disruption in Thessaly has nationwide repercussions.
Μειώνοντας το ζωικό κεφάλαιο, περιορίζεται η προσφορά του γάλακτος. Εφόσον περιορίζεται η προσφορά του γάλακτος, πρέπει και εμείς να συνεχίσουμε να παράγουμε λιγότερη φέτα.
According to industry estimates from the National Interprofessional Organization of Feta, by 2026, feta production may face a shortfall of approximately 20,000 tons due to reduced milk availability.
3 same-sex couples tied the knot just after midnight at Amsterdam City Hall on Wednesday in honor of the 25th anniversary of the world's first gay marriages. The celebration honored the 2001 group wedding when 4 same-sex couples were married in a landmark ceremony for LGBTQ+ rights that paved the way for similar legislation in nearly 40 countries around the world. Some of the couples who exchanged vows on that momentous night were present at the anniversary wedding ceremony, as well as Prime Minister Rob Jetten, who himself is openly gay and plans to marry his partner soon.
As a Prime Minister, I'm very proud that we celebrate 25 years of universal marriage here in the Netherlands. And also for me personally, I can still remember when I was 14 years old watching TV, seeing the first couples getting married here in Amsterdam. That was also very inspiring and emancipating for me personally, as it has been for so many others.
While such weddings are commonplace now in the Netherlands, Jetten says there is still more work to be done.
Yeah, I think the Netherlands needs to get back on track, especially protecting trans persons in the Netherlands, or creating better legislation for surrogacy to make sure that we become a top 10 country again in terms of queer rights.
Since 2001, more than 36,000 same-sex couples have married, according to the country's official statistics office.